So, my friends, that's what's happening on the island of Mokuokeawe, or the Big Island. There's trouble brewing also on the island of Maui and Oahu. Okay, Kahikili, which is the king now, his father passes away. Now, remember, his father, Kekaliki, was the same guy that was warring with alapa'i when Kamehameha was born, yeah? Well, battles continue, and the Oahu chief, Kaleuohulani, also was ruler over Kauai. He's getting old, and so his son, Kumahana, takes over. Unfortunately, Kumahana is not benevolent like his dad, and he starts to be a cruel and tyrannical ruler, which causes his ouster. Yeah, the people get rid of him. Yeah, he's allowed to live, but he's stripped of his kingly title. And what happens is they designate a man by the name of Kahahana, which is a relative of Kaleuohulani. It's not one of his sons, but this Kahahana was raised as a little boy by Kahikili in Maui. And so it's great news for Kahikili because he has this person which he raised and loves, and he tells his nephew, I'm really going to miss you when you go to Oahu, but to ease my missing things of you, how's about if you give Uncle Kahikili a portion of Oahu called Kualoa? And Kahahana's not knowing the significance of this place, tells his uncle, yeah, no problem, uncle, you can have it. I'll give it to you, and you can do what you want. Yeah, not knowing that Kualoa is a very, very sacred spot on Oahu. In fact, of all the Hawaiian Islands, it's been for many hundreds of years. This is where it is. Those of you that have visited Oahu knows where it is. And so Kahikili tells Kahahana that and there's the island of Mokuli'i, or Chinaman's Hat. What makes this place so special is that for hundreds and hundreds of years, this is where the great sperm whales came to die and washed up on the beach. And the Hawaiians used to go and gather the bones to make weapons and other things, but the highly prized item was the sperm whale teeth, which they were carved into pendants that liken a open mouth or tongue extended. Okay, with somebody that spoke with authority, or ha, you can liken all of that. It's also a representation of the one of the gods, the four major gods. This one is Kanaloa, the god of the deep, and that's why Kualoa was highly prized. And it also contained a great, just like a pyramid of the great chiefs of Oahu. They were all buried inside those lava tubes. And that mountain is called Kaneho'olani. But anyway, this is an actual artifact that belonged to my great-grandmother, Sarah, that was donated to the Bishop Museum back in the early 60s because my grandfather thought it would be better, and because some of his siblings were arguing over the ownership of that, and so he donated it to the museum. So I have a lot of friends at the museum at the time, and we were able to find the letter, and they were able to find the item, and so I actually got to touch and feel and see the pendant that belonged to my ancestors, and it was really, really a wonderful experience for me, and I've been there many a time since to be able to go look at it. So anyway, what happens now? Kahikili finds out that Kahana is going to go back on his promise because Kahana's kahuna nui is a man by the name of Ka'opulupulu, and Ka'opulupulu says you can't give him Kualoa. That's where the ivory comes from. That's what makes Oahu strong. Kahikili's kahuna nui is Ka'opulupulu's little brother, Kaleopulupulu. They don't get along. The brothers don't get along, and the little brother starts planting lies in Kahana's ears. Kahikili also there to stir the pot, telling Kahana that, you know what, your kahuna's going to take over, he's going to kill you, unbeknownst to you, but he's going to take over Oahu. And unfortunately, when Kahana gets older, he starts to do bad habits like Kumahana, Peleoholani's son. He starts to treat the common folk really bad. And regardless of that, he believes the lies of Kaleopulupulu and ends up killing his kahuna nui and his kahuna nui's son now. They know they're going to die. They have that kind of connections about seers and prophets like they did in those days. Those kahunas were amazing, spiritually gifted gentlemen, and priestess too, also females. But they tattoo their knees in a sign from their god, and it's called kuli, which means that kuli is deaf, means deaf in Hawaiian, but also that my chief didn't listen to my advice. And so by doing that, they end up cursing Kahahana that he'd have no more issue, no more descendants. And, when Kahekili finds out that, these two, people are killed, well, the great Kahuna Nui, he sends his armies to Oahu from Maui. And exploratory forces land, and they have a meeting, and Oahu chiefs get together and pretty much decide they have a huge mountain to climb. But nevertheless, 8 of the generals in the Oahu armies decide to do a commando raid, so to speak, on some of the forces that were camped in Waikiki. And they do incredibly well in that skirmish. In fact, they kill hundreds and hundreds of Maui invaders. It's amazing. Now, they never heard of Sparta. They never saw the movie 300. But you have your own version, Hawaiian style, 8 against hundreds, and they all live to fight another day. Okay. So when Kahekili comes with the rest of his armada, his forces, the Oahu chiefs do pretty good in the battles, and they even end up killing one of Kahekili's favorite generals. But because of this act, Kahekili, I guess because he really loved this general and was close to, he goes full force and he commits genocide. The battle turns in his favor, and men, women, children, your belongings, pet cat, dog, fish, all killed. And the Oahu lines pretty much come to an end. Now, if you were still alive, if you were lucky enough to escape, some of them hid out in the countryside. Some of them actually left Kauai and left Oahu and escaped to Kauai to escape the slaughter. One of Kahekili's generals, in memorial, made a house of bones in Moanalua Valley. The front fence was all the femurs from the men and women and chiefs that he killed, and then around his doorway was all the skulls. Now, this house was located near Fort Shafter, where Fort Shafter is today in Moanalua Valley. So there came an end to the Oahu lines, and now Oahu was now occupied by the men from Maui. Okay, so Oahu lines no more. Okay. Now Kamehameha hears that Kahekili is busy. Yeah, he's busy right now, right? He's on Oahu fighting the Kahahana. So he takes advantage of that. In the meantime, Kahekili, he stays in Waikiki. He moves his capital there, and he sends his son Kalanikupuli back to take care of Maui. Kalanikupuli is not the warrior like his father. Kamehameha knows that. So Kamehameha gets his war canoes ready, reportedly over 800, containing maybe 14,000 men, and they land on Maui, culminating at them landing on the beach in Kahului, which is near Wailuku. Okay, and when he gets to the beach, there's some resistance, but they have different strongholds set up in the valley. The Maui defenders, Kalanikupuli guys. But what Kamehameha does, he tells his men, take the canoes apart. That if the battle goes south, then we're not going to retreat. And he makes that famous statement, which reads, "Imua e na puki'i, a ino I kawai ava ava, a ohe hope e ho mai ai," which means, "Forward, my young brothers, and drink the bitter waters," referring to battle. There is no turning back. So this gives the men extra incentive to do well. Kalanikupuli, what he does, just in case, he sets up ladders and different things of escape in the back of Iao Valley. If the battle doesn't go well, he can crawl over the back of the mountain with his chiefs and escape to Oahu. That's what he eventually does. Kamehameha, this is the first time it's recorded that Kamehameha uses the cannon, Lopaka. And he named another cannon, Kalola, in battle, which decimates the Maui defenders. In fact, the dead got so bad that it started damming the streams of Iao Stream in the valley. And the name of the battle is called Kipani Bai, or the damming of the waters. Okay, so that's what happens. Kamehameha now controls Maui and the Big Island. Yeah, well, the Big Island, there's still some civil war. We'll go back really quickly. He finds out, Keoua finds out that Kamehameha is busy. He's on Maui now, right? Warring with Kalanikupule. So Keoua takes the opportunity to go up to Kohala from Ka'u, starts to make havoc, chopping down coconut trees, breaking the lo'i or the taro patches, desecrates Haleoliloa in Waipio Valley, and starts to kill Kamehameha's people in Kohala. Kamehameha finds out about that. He rushes back to the Big Island. Okay, he rushes back. Okay. Keoua gets out of Kohala. He's going down to Hilo now, going back to Ka'u. He's still kind of angry at his uncle Keawe about the land distribution. So he wars with his uncle, and Keawe is killed by Keoua's armies. Some say it was friendly fire. Keoua had a man within his Keawe's own armies that ended up killing him. Again, there's different versions. We'll never know. Yeah. But we do know that he was killed that day. So in that one swoop, the island is broken in half, right? Keoua has one side, Kamehameha controls one portion. Kamehameha is not back yet. Keoua is going back in groups of, he splits his army in three. First division, they go through Kilauea volcano, they make it, but the second division is annihilated by an explosion or an eruption that happens at Kilauea. Men, women, his soldiers are all killed. And my cousin Poi Ishibashi was kind enough to take me and Drina there, and we actually saw the footprints of the men and women and warriors that were trying to escape, and it stuck in the pavement, so to speak, in Ka'u today. So that was very sobering to see this event that happened. Psychologically, pretty much, and in my opinion, devastating Keoua, because when you take care of the district of Ka'u and Puna, you become a steward for Tutupele, or the volcano. Okay. Now, for this to happen to Keoua and his men, maybe he thought, maybe I should have took the canoes. Maybe I should have went by sea back. But anyway, it happened. And in the meantime, Keoua knows that Kamehameha is building a war temple in Kauai. The great kahuna from Kauai tells Kamehameha that the only way he'll bring civil war to an end on his island, that he has to rebuild the war temple in Kauai. So Kamehameha spends time, and he actually helps in the rebuilding of that heiau, and it's completed. And so he sends Kamehameha sends his two uncles, Keaweheula and Kamanaba, down to Ka'u to talk to Keoua, to have him come to Kauai and to talk peace. And let's talk it over. Let's have a peaceful resolution to our 10-year civil war. Now Keoua's Ka'u man telling his boss, this is a trap. Let's just kill these two guys. And then we'll go and war on Kamehameha. We die, but at least these two guys won't be around. Keoua tells his men, no, these men were sacred to my father. My father loved these two men. And so what Keoua does, he gets his men ready. Some travel by land, but his close companions are in his canoe. Stories say there were 12 of them plus his kahuna nui. Okay. So, what's that? 13 guys, 14 guys. And they travel up in canoes, a flotilla of about maybe 6 canoes. Keoua was in the first canoe. But before they get to Kauai, he stops at a brackish water pond called Luahini Bai. It's in Kiholo Bay, just before Kauai, and he ceremoniously takes a bath, purifies himself. And when he's completed, he cuts off or he mutilates his body. He cuts off a part of his penis. Pretty much signifying that he knows that he's going to be that first sacrifice on that new heiau, a Luakini heiau, that Kamehameha completed, him and his men. And that way, that would do more harm than good, because now he's not whole. Now, on the first fruits of a offering, it needs to be whole. No blemish, no anything in that offering. Now, he mutilated himself, but Kamehameha then don't know that he does this. But anyway, he does this. This is what Luahini Vai looks like today, my friends. Some guy with a lot of extra cash back in 1985 goes ahead and buys this property, puts up a 4-bedroom, 4-bath home, solar grid, water catchment system because they're off the main utilities. And later on, in 2016, recently, it might have been sold again. Somebody sold it for $16 million. So you hear the term paradise for sale. It's still happening today. This spot is very sacred to the people of Kau, especially because this is where that ceremony happened. But you know, progress, if you want to call it progress, my friends. But getting back to Kauai, the Kau contingent is met by Kamehameha and his uncles and different armies camped on the beach. Now, there's a famous picture by Herb Kani that I didn't have permission to use, so you're not going to see it in my paintings. I mean, in my presentation, but it's a especially poignant incident, especially for me and my family. Why? Because we had family on both sides that day. Okay. Now, Keua Koahu'ula, as previously mentioned, was the kahuna nui of Kau. His kahuna nui, a man whom he dearly loved, became a father figure to him, and vice versa. Kua Kahela was his name. Kua Kahela was his name. Treated Keoa like his son. Kua Kahela is my third generation great grandfather. Okay. He's the only one that lives that day. That first canoe, there's a misunderstanding, okay, or whatever you want to call it. Again, you know, there's many different versions of what happens. Ke'amuku is pretty much reported to have started the trouble there. He's on the beach with Kamehameha. He starts throwing spears at this group, and there's a fracas that breaks out, and all the men on Keo'ua's canoe are killed except this kahuna nui, Kua Kahela. He slides over the canoe, goes under the water, and he escapes the side of the beach, and he hides at his sister's house that has there's a village right below Pu'ukohola in Kauai. His sister was Kikui Apu'iwa II. Who is this lady? This is Kamehameha's mom, Kua Kahela's sister. Okay. Now, Kua Kahela had a son. His name is Waipanui. Waipanui was an adjutant general in Kamehameha's army in charge of the fleet. He was with Kamehameha that day on the beach at Kauai. Okay. So put yourself in Waipanui's place. Okay. You're with Kamehameha. You see the uncles coming in and your dad on the Kau canoes, and all this trouble breaks out. Waipanui had a son named Kamehameha Waipa. He's named after one of his uncles. And this Kamehameha Waipa marries Marianne Parker, the daughter of John Palmer Parker, founder of the Parker Ranch, and Kipikani, his Hawaiian wife, which is also a great-granddaughter of Kamehameha. And they have Kamehameha Waipa and his wife have a son named Robert. Robert has a son named Arthur. Arthur has a son named David. And David has a son named Brook. And so you see why this incident that happened at Kauai still pulls heavy on my heartstrings. Yeah. Both sides of the family was there that day. Unfortunately, or, you know, that's their right to do it, but a lot of my cousins and family will not celebrate Kamehameha Day today, over 200 years later, because of the incident that happened at Kauai. Kamehameha now controls all of the Big Island. Okay, he sends one of his swiftest messengers to Oahu, to Kahikili, and there's two Ulumaika stones. There's a white stone and a black stone. And the messenger, Kahikili already knows what that means. A black stone means if he chooses that one, we'll have war. If he chooses a white stone, means that we want peace. Kahikili tells him, you know what? I'm gonna die soon. I can feel it already. When I die, Oahu will be open. You can come take Oahu. So Kahikili dies shortly after that in Waikiki. So Kalani Kopuli takes over, but as they prepare his funeral ceremonies, his twin brothers, other Po'olua chiefs, Kamehameha and Kamanama, come up from the Big Island and retrieve his bones that were prepared in a ka'ai or a Senate casket, like the one pictured. This is Liloa's casket, a ka'ai, and Lonoika Makahiki, one of his grandsons. This is how it looks like. Hawaiians just kept the bones. They removed the flesh, and that's what kept the mana, or the spiritual power of the people were in the bones. And so they come, and the Maui guys want to kill these guys. They're the enemy, but they can't because of protocol. They know that this is Kahikili's brothers. So they take his bones and they take it back to the Big Island, to the family cave near Kaloko. So once Kamehameha hears that Oahu is open, he has a pit stop on Molokai, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. He has a war council, and he doesn't invite one of his top generals, Kaiana. We heard about Kaiana earlier. He's the guy that caught John Young and Isaac Davis. Kaiana was very well liked by a lot of the British and Yankee sea captains. He's well traveled. Kaiana has been to Canton, China. There's actual eyewitness accounts of him walking in the streets of Canton. The women are melting because they say he looks like a Greek statue come to life, walking in his feather helmet and his malo and his bronze body. He was about 6'5", 275. But he made a lot of friends, and he started getting a lot of guns and armament. And that's why Kamehameha, when they ended up meeting in Kona, became a favorite. But rumor had it, rumors again, that there was an affair between Kaiana and his favorite wife, Kahumanu, which greatly upset Kamehameha. And so by Kaiana not being invited to this war council on Molokai, he knew that Kamehameha was probably going to have him killed, probably by friendly fire in battle. And so what Kaiana does with his brother, Nahiolea, I think Namakaeha ends up staying on the Big Island. He's not in this battle, but there's about over 1,000 of them in this group of soldiers that Kaiana had. As they're crossing the channel, the Kaiwi Channel between Molokai and Oahu, Kaiana breaks off and goes with his guys and lands in Waimanalo on Kailua's side and hooks up with the Maui defenders, okay? Kamehameha lets him go. He knows already. His Kaiana is gone. And so there's different versions of what happened next. Kamehameha lands his canoes from Wailaiki all the way to Waikiki. It's a huge flotilla, again, just as big as the armada that invades Maui. And the Maui armies defending Oahu are no match. Again, Kahikili's dead. Kalani Kopuli is left to take over. And one version is Kaiana is killed, where Boy Scouts and Queen Emma Summer Palace is in Nuuanu Valley. One version says that John Young and Isaac Davis see him. He didn't know the matter of or the meaning of retreat. He's there rallying his men, and so they aim a cannon right by the wall. And one version says he's cut in half with a cannonball. Another version says that he had 3 shots on his right side with musket, and then another shot in his leg, which hits his artery, which he bleeds out. But the poignant story in this incident is that his wife, Kikupu Ohi, which he loves dearly, on Molokai, when he says his goodbye, because he tells her, you know what, Kamehameha wants me dead, so I'm gonna go with the Maui guys. But she tells him on Molokai, you know what, my husband, I'm gonna stay with Kamehameha. Kaiana trained her how to shoot with the musket. She was very expert as a marks person, and she trained a lot of her female friends. So they had a special squad in Kamehameha's armies that were really crack shots. And when she sees her husband fall in battle, they stop the battle for her, and she goes up and she does a wail and cries, and it's a very poignant scene. Now, like I said, that's one version. Since that time, I've had 3 different individuals on 3 different occasions, all descendants of Kaiana, come and tell me that he had a body double that day, that he did not die at that battle, that he escaped the battle, and he ended up in the Pacific Northwest, marrying and ending out his life there, having children up there with Native Americans up there. And so, like I said, my friends, there's different versions of different things that happened in Hawaiian history. Yeah. I wasn't there. You wasn't there. We don't know. This is just me repeating those stories. Okay. So Kalani Kupuli and his forces are completely routed. The battle is culminated in, of course, everybody knows Nu'uanupali. Of the defending forces were tried to escape, and a lot of them died here when they were building the tunnels that now are in this area. They found over 800 bones or skulls on the bottom of the cliff. Kalani'apu'u was able to escape, but he was caught about a year later, and then later sacrificed by Kamehameha at one of the war temples. So what happens next? Kauai is still out there, yeah. Kauai is ruled by, at this time, used to be a man, a Kahikili's brother. His name was Kaeokulani, and his wife Kamakahele. Kaeokulani is killed in some treacherous act that we'll talk about in another story. I got a lot of stories we'll be sharing in this video series. So his son takes over. His son is named Kumuali'i. Kamehameha is preparing to attack on Oahu. He's building up his forces again. Okay. Kumuali'i, like I mentioned, his father was Kaeokulani and his mama was Kamakahele. But what makes this individual especially unique is that Kumuali'i was born at a special birthing site called Holoholokū. Now there's another very special site in the Hawaiian Islands. The other one is on Oahu called Pukaniloko. It's in Wahiawa. Now the story goes, or the legends say that if Ali'i is born here, put on the rock, doesn't cry, he'll be a great leader and he'll have the opportunity, if he should need, to use the nature or the elements in battle. Okay. Amazing. Huh? Amazing. When Kamehameha, the first, after everything was done, his wife, his sacred wife, Keopuolani, was about to give birth to Kamehameha II, Liholiho. He wanted her to give birth at Kukaniloko. But Keopuolani never made it there. She was sick and she gave birth somewhere else. So Liholiho was not born at Kukaniloko. But that's how strong that incentive was to get these guys born at these different spots. Anyway, I was able to visit this very special birthing area. Me and my family, we went up a couple of years ago. It's in Wailua River area. It's called, it's a state park now. And this is how it looks like. It's just a cave. There's a couple of birthing stones. But Kumuali'i is, he's born here. And his kahunas are very well connected too. And they find out that Kamehameha is getting ready a huge army, navy. He has white man ships and different war canoes, and he's coming. And so what Kumuali'i does, and now this story was shared to me by my dad. It's not one you find in the history books. Okay, so he remembers a certain chant and prayer that he was taught as a child growing up, that if he should need help from the elements, that he could call upon it. And so he remembers this, and he starts the chant early in the morning up in the mountains, and the chant culminates and ends in the late afternoon down at the beach. And so what he does at the conclusion of that chant and that prayers, he has a staff, and with the staff, he touches the ocean and the waters, and from there, a huge storm goes out. And by that time, Kamehameha is in the middle of the channel with his 800 plus canoes and ships. It's a huge gale. It's terrible. I mean, came out of nowhere, and it swamps his fleet, and a lot of his men die. They drown. Yeah, they know how to swim, but under these circumstances, it was horrible. They had to turn around and come back to Oahu. Now, some of my uncles from Kauai said no. Some of them made it. We kicked their butt, and then they went back. Okay, so there's another versions. But Kamehameha's first attempt at Kauai was stopped. He couldn't do it. Okay, he couldn't do it. So Kamehameha tries again. A couple of years later, he builds up his fleet again. There's huge fleets waiting on the coast of Waianae, ready to sail out again. And then a horrible event happens in Honolulu. Some foreign ship comes in carrying what they call at the time the Black Plague. And half the population of Oahu is killed, or more than that. Kamehameha gets sick. His Ahula chiefs get sick. Some of them die. And most of his armies die. And like I said, even Kamehameha almost dies. He almost dies. He gets really, really sick. So the second attempt is stopped again by this terrible plague that hits Oahu at the time. So long story short, there's a peaceful agreement. Kaumoli'i is invited to come to Oahu, and on neutral ground, he's on a ship in Honolulu Harbor by Captain Wingate. I forget. I gotta double check my sources on that. Both sides trust this guy. The meeting is also facilitated by Isaac Davis, and by peaceful agreement, Kaumoli'i agrees to be, Kamehameha will be the sovereign. Kauai will be loyal to Kamehameha, and Kamehameha will not invade. But unbeknownst to Kamehameha, a lot of his chiefs were not happy with that, and they wanted Kaumoli'i killed. Okay, they had made a plan to kill him by poisoning him at a dinner that was supposed to happen later on that evening. Isaac Davis got wind of that. He told Kaumoli'i, "You better not stay. They want you dead." Kamehameha is his lower ranking guys. To this day, again, my friends, we don't know if Kamehameha knew about the plot. We don't know. Okay, but regardless, Kaumoli'i found out about it by Isaac Davis, and he goes back to Kauai. He doesn't stay. And because these men are so upset at what had transpired, they gave the poison to Isaac Davis, and they end up killing Isaac Davis. Okay. This greatly upsets Kamehameha too. It makes him rethink his plans about staying on Oahu, because he moved his capital now to Oahu. Decides that there's too much side deals going on with his lower ranking men that took the place of their father on his councils, because all his Ahu'ula original uncles died now. Their sons took over. They started making side deals with different ships coming in, getting guns, cannon, and stuff for their own good. So Kamehameha makes them put all of these guns and armament on one ship, and he has them travel with him, and they sail back to Kona. Kamehameha relocates his capital and ends up dying in Kona. But what happens to Kaumoli'i? Kahomano goes up eventually after Kamehameha dies, kidnaps him, marries him, and then makes sure that there will not be any further anarchy or trouble from Kauai. Kaumoli'i is taken to Maui, Lahaina, and that's where his grave is today. He's on Lahaina in that ceremony, that cemetery by the church. So that's what happens to Kauai. Okay, that's what happens to Kauai.